You're not broken, but you act as if you are. You think you need more sex, more pleasure, more bodies. You don't say it out loud, but your mind is trapped in it. You live craving skin, touches that mean nothing, empty orgasms, and worst of all, you mistake it for freedom. Do you know who spoke about this? Carl Jung, and he said it with a coldness that still unsettles. Jung didn't call it addiction, he called it possession, not by a demon but by a shadow, that shadow you carry inside that seizes control whenever you stop being present. When sex drives your life, you're not the one deciding. It's the part of you you know least, the part you hide, the part you repressed, living deep in your unconscious. And when that part awakens, it doesn't seek love, it seeks to control you. Because sexual energy, according to Jung, is one of the most powerful forces in the human soul. But when you don't integrate it, it consumes you, burns you, dominates you, transforms you, and that's where the fall begins. You start believing you're free because you sleep with whoever you want, and you end up a slave to every impulse. But I don't blame you. This world is designed for it. Every ad, every social network, every second of entertainment sells you the same thing: sex, skin, desire, no love, no connection, just flesh, just bodies, just emptiness. And you know why it works so well? Because it activates the most primitive part of you, the part beneath even your will. The shadow, Jung said, isn't something you can destroy. It's something you must look at. And when you don't look, it takes over your life in silence, like a spiritual parasite. Think about it. How many decisions have you made in recent months driven solely by sexual desire? How many times have you approached someone not for who they are, but for what they provoke in you? How many times have you felt that sex gave you power, only to find yourself emptier afterward? You know it. You don't need me to tell you. That feeling of fulfillment just after climax lasts less than a sigh. And then comes the silence. The same silence you try to fill with more sex, more distractions, more bodies, and it's never enough. It's not about quantity, it's about consciousness. Jung made it clear. Everything that isn't made conscious manifests in our lives as fate, and that includes your sexual energy. When you don't understand your desire, it decides for you. It chooses your partners, defines your relationships, ties you to people you don't love, simply because your body needs them. And spiritually, that's a form of slavery. But they've sold it to you as freedom, as empowerment, as authenticity, and you bought it. We all did. Modern culture has sexualized even the soul, and they've made us believe we're healing when in reality we're anesthetized. Each orgasm a pill against the void. Each night a patch to avoid thinking. Each body an excuse not to face your own. But here's the worst part. Every time you let sex take control, you give away a piece of your soul. Because it's not just a physical act. Symbolically, each sexual encounter is an exchange of energy. And if you don't know who you're lying with, you don't know what you're absorbing. Jung spoke of the anima and animus as representations of the feminine and masculine soul within each person, saying that in every relationship those energies project, mix, and change. And if you do it unconsciously, you don't just mix, you contaminate. Have you ever wondered why you feel worse after certain encounters? Why, despite the pleasure, you feel sadness, anxiety, disconnection? It's because the soul isn't meant to fragment itself so many times, and each time you fragment, you lose something, and you don't even know what. Jung said sexual repression isn't the solution, but neither is libertinage. The key lies in integration. Looking within, understanding that desire isn't the enemy, but can become your jailer if you don't comprehend it. And here's where the spiritual part enters. Sex isn't just biology. It's symbol, it's archetype. It's a way to connect with the divine or the demonic, depending on your approach. When you engage from the soul, sex transforms, heals, unites. But from the shadow, sex destroys, hurts, isolates. And there you are, confusing intensity with love, confusing desire with connection, confusing bodies with companionship. Meanwhile, your soul dims, not because of the act itself, but because you're disconnected from your true nature. That's the trap. When sex controls your life, it's the most broken part of you that takes the wheel, and you wander seeking pleasure like a man crawling toward a drop of water in the desert. And the more you drink, the thirstier you become. Because pleasure doesn't fill the void, it only disguises it. The spiritual world knows this. That's why in many ancient traditions, sexual energy was sacred. Not trivialized, not given away, because they understood it as the creative power of the soul. But you're wasting it in every bed where you leave part of yourself. For what? To avoid loneliness, to not face your sadness, to ignore what's inside. Jung said the most difficult task for a human being is to confront their own shadow. And you're feeding it, letting it grow, turning your desire into a god. And everything elevated to godhood demands sacrifice. How much have you already sacrificed in the name of sex? How much peace, how much time, how much dignity? Here's the truth nobody wants to accept. Sex doesn't save you. Desire doesn't complete you. It merely reveals you, shows you who you are when no one is watching. And if all you see in yourself is hunger, then you must stop, not to repress, but to observe. Because the soul doesn't heal with more pleasure. It heals with truth. And the truth is this. You're running, fleeing toward beds that won't hold you, seeking embraces that only last a night, looking into eyes that don't know you. For what? To avoid the question that haunts you in the silence. Who are you when no one desires you? There lies your shadow. There lies your soul. And there your freedom begins. Carl Jung knew it. He wrote it, lived it, left it in words that still echo uncomfortably today. We do not become illuminated by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Are you willing to look within? Because if you don't, your shadow will, and I assure you it will show no mercy. Now let's go deeper into what no one dares say. When sex takes control, it not only alters your behavior, but changes your destiny. That's no pretty phrase. It's a psychic truth. Jung spoke of individuation as the journey to wholeness. And when you let one part of you, unchecked sexual desire, drive your existence, you halt that process. You renounce your evolution. There's something worse than not knowing yourself. Believing that you do while your shadow drags you through the darkest corners of your being. When Jung said the unconscious governs our lives and we call it fate, he wasn't speaking in metaphors. He was talking about you, your patterns, that inexplicable attraction to people you know aren't good for you, that anxiety when you go without sex, that internal voice telling you you're fine while everything inside you is crumbling. Do you know what that is? It's your shadow wearing your mask. And the sexual shadow is among the most powerful, because it's not only lust, it's obsession with being desired, the constant need for validation, the brutal fear of loneliness. Some cannot be alone for 5 minutes without feeling worthless. Some only feel alive when someone desires them. Do you see the trap? Your value has been reduced to the reflection you evoke in others. You don't shine. You only glow by someone else's gaze. That's not power. It's emotional dependence dressed as sexual freedom. But it's not about morality. It's about consciousness, knowing from where you relate. You might have 100 names in your history and still feel invisible. You might find pleasure every night and still wake in unrest. Because sex without soul is noise, movement without direction, consumption, and you are not a consumer of bodies, though the system has you believe otherwise. Emotional capitalism has turned sex into a commodity, a distraction, a product, and without realizing it, you've become a frequent customer. They sell you freedom but give you addiction, promise connection but deliver isolation. The more accessible pleasure is, the emptier the experience becomes. And here's the most dangerous thing. You start losing the capacity for real intimacy. You get so used to immediacy that when someone offers you something deep, you're scared and you flee, because that requires presence, and you've been hiding behind desire for too long. Jung spoke of the self as the most authentic core of being, the meeting point between conscious psyche and unconscious soul. Reaching it demands courage, renouncing distraction, facing the void head-on, and understanding that desire is not the enemy, but neither is it your master. Desire must be guided, channeled, acknowledged as a sacred force, not treated as a daily recreational drug. The problem isn't having desire. The problem is not knowing what sustains it, not knowing which wound it springs from. Sometimes what you feel isn't desire, but the need to be seen, to be touched, to be validated. The wound of abandonment disguised as desire. And if you don't understand that, you'll keep calling pleasure what is really pain in disguise. You'll keep lying with people who don't see you, who only seek the same escape. Yes, you could go on like this your whole life. Easy, fast, comfortable, but at what cost? Because the more you feed that pattern, the farther you move from yourself, and eventually you won't know whether your desire comes from your soul or your wound, from your essence or your trauma. That's where Jung pointed with his thinking. Integration, ceasing to divide yourself, reclaiming power over yourself. True spiritual mastery isn't about renouncing sex, but about governing it. Knowing when it arises from love and when from fear. Learning to use that energy as a source of creation, not as a tool of escape. Conscious sexuality isn't a trend. It's an evolutionary necessity. Only when you make peace with your desire can you look someone in the eye without trying to possess them. Only when your sexual shadow has been illuminated can you give yourself without losing yourself. And here comes the most brutal part. Until you integrate your sexual energy, you'll keep repeating the same bonds, the same stories, the same breakups. Because life will keep showing you the same mirrors until you look inside. Until you recognize that it's not sex controlling you, but what you've refused to heal. So stop running. Stop pretending everything's fine. Stop seeking outside what can only be rebuilt within. Every time you give your body away without presence, you reinforce the story that you're not enough on your own. Every time you use sex as anesthesia, you tell your soul its pain isn't worth attention, and sooner or later, that takes its toll. You don't see it now, but you'll feel it in the silence, in the insomnia, in the disconnection. And the worst part is, you'll get used to it. Because an unheard soul goes silent, but doesn't forget. If you don't listen, it will speak through your body. Falling ill, self-sabotage, toxic relationships, emotional exhaustion, nameless anxiety. Here you stand at a crossroads, Continue letting sex dictate your path, or begin to look at where your desire originates. It's not about extinguishing your fire. It's about learning to hold it, about not burning yourself. Because your desire isn't your enemy, it's your compass. But only if you learn to read it. Only if you stop using it as an escape and start using it as a mirror. If you've made it this far, it's no accident. No one sticks with uncomfortable truths unless they're on the edge of something. You may be at the brink of transformation, or you may still be clinging to a version of yourself that no longer serves you. What's clear is that a part of you has already awakened, a part that's tired of the void disguised as pleasure, that no longer wants another body but to return to your own, that no longer seeks ecstasy but presence. Because in the end, everything you call desire, everything you believe is necessity, is nothing but a signal. A call from within that screams, "Look at me, observe yourself without judgment," because only then can you break the cycle. Not from hatred of your past, but from the brutal compassion that comes from facing your shadow and telling it, "You no longer control me." And that is the true revolution. One that needs no witnesses, one that happens in silence but transforms everything. Because when you begin to live with sexual consciousness, you no longer seek approval. You no longer need anyone's gaze to feel alive. Then something new emerges, something that's always been there, but you never touched. Power. Not the power to seduce, but the power to inhabit yourself. To be in your body without fear, to feel without needing permission, and without using feeling as a mask to avoid thinking. I tell you this plainly, if you manage to cross this threshold, you will never return, because there is no greater freedom than knowing yourself without filters, no greater spiritual act than looking at your desire and turning it into a tool, not a prison. If you achieve that, you will no longer be at the world's mercy, because the world may offer distractions, but you will no longer be fleeing. So if this resonated with you, if something inside you moved even a millimeter, subscribe, because what comes next is even more uncomfortable, more profound, more real. And if you dare, drop a single sentence in the comments. I am not my shadow. That's it. Because whoever can name it begins to break the spell. Most remain trapped, but you can choose. This is the beginning, and what comes next isn't for everyone.